I sat across from Jessica and Trevor in the HR conference room on Thursday morning at 9:15. Jessica slid a formal complaint across the table. "You made him feel inferior. That's harassment," she said. Trevor smirked, arms crossed. The complaint listed 12 incidents where I undermined his authority and created a hostile environment. My pulse quickened, but I simply nodded, staying silent. I thought of the folder hidden in my desk drawer. I said nothing. Absolutely nothing. I just watched Trevor's smug face and waited. The tension in that conference room felt thick enough to choke on. Jessica leaned back in her chair, her expression perfectly neutral in that way HR professionals master. Trevor sat beside her, and I could practically feel the satisfaction radiating off him. "Helena," Jessica began, opening a manila folder, "you've been under observation for the past 3 months. We've documented a pattern of behavior that's become increasingly concerning." I kept my face blank, my hands folded on the table. Inside, my mind was racing. But I'd learned long ago that silence was sometimes the best strategy. Jessica began listing incidents, reading from her notes with the precision of someone who'd rehearsed this. March 5th. During the executive team meeting, you questioned Trevor's budget proposal in front of the entire leadership team. You called his projections, and I quote, "mathematically impossible." "They were," I said quietly. Jessica continued as if I hadn't spoken. March 18th. During a client pitch, you interrupted Trevor's presentation to correct his calculations in front of our potential client. The numbers were wrong by $40,000. The client would have noticed. April 2nd, Jessica went on, her voice taking on a harder edge. You sent an email to the CFO, copying the entire finance team, pointing out what you called discrepancies in Trevor's department spending. You undermined his authority as a department head. "I'm a senior financial analyst," I said. "Reviewing department spending is literally my job description." Trevor spoke for the first time, his voice dripping with wounded innocence. "You've been trying to make me look incompetent since I joined the company. Every meeting, every project, you find some way to question my judgment or contradict me publicly." I turned to look at him directly. Trevor Carlisle, 28 years old, Vice President of Marketing, son of our CEO Robert Carlisle. He'd been at Meridian Technologies for exactly 11 months. I'd been here for 6 years, working my way up from junior analyst to senior analyst, earning every promotion through late nights and meticulous work. "I've raised legitimate financial concerns," I said. "That's what I'm paid to do." Jessica cut me off. "Intent doesn't matter, Helena. Impact does. Trevor has documented feeling targeted, harassed, and professionally undermined. You've created a hostile work environment." The words hung in the air. Hostile work environment. The same language used to describe sexual harassment, discrimination, actual abuse. And they were using it because I'd done my job and caught discrepancies in the CEO's son's budget management. "I'd like to present my documentation," I said. "I have records of every instance you've mentioned. I can show you the actual numbers, the policy violations, the vendor concerns that I was flagging." "This isn't a trial," Jessica said firmly. "This is a corrective action meeting. We're not here to debate your interpretation of financial data. We're here to address your behavior and its impact on a colleague." She slid 2 pieces of paper across the table. "You have 2 options. Option 1. Sign this performance improvement plan. It requires you to report to Trevor weekly, seek his approval on all findings before distributing them, and attend 8 weeks of sensitivity training focused on collaborative communication and respecting authority." I stared at the PIP, reading the terms. They were essentially requiring me to get permission from the person I was supposed to be auditing before I could report any problems I found. It would make my job impossible. It would make me complicit in whatever he was doing. "Option 2? I asked. "Immediate termination." The words landed like a physical blow. I looked up at Jessica, then at Trevor. His smirk had returned, just slightly, at the corner of his mouth. "You're giving me the choice between becoming ineffective at my job or losing my job entirely," I said. "We're giving you the choice between modifying your approach to be more team-oriented or choosing to leave the organization, Jessica said. The company values collaboration and mutual respect. I sat back, my mind spinning. This was a setup. They'd never intended to let me actually choose. The PIP was designed to be impossible, to either force me out through frustration or to neutralize my ability to do oversight. An outright termination would let them control the narrative. I need time to think about this, I said. Jessica's expression hardened. She reached into her folder and pulled out another document, this one thicker. We anticipated you might choose the difficult path. She slid the new papers across. I recognized it immediately. Termination paperwork. Already filled out. My name, my position, today's date, severance terms, 12 weeks pay, and attached, a non-disclosure agreement. Sign this instead, Jessica said. Leave quietly. You'll receive your severance. We'll process this as a voluntary resignation, and you'll agree not to discuss the circumstances of your departure with anyone. Or we proceed with formal disciplinary action that goes on your permanent record, and then termination for cause, which means no severance and a black mark that will follow you to every future employer. I looked at the papers, my hands steady even though my heart was pounding. They'd prepared my termination paperwork in advance. This meeting was never about giving me choices. It was about giving me the illusion of choice while backing me into a corner. You planned to fire me before I even walked into this room, I said. We planned for all contingencies, Jessica replied. The question is whether you want to make this easy or difficult for everyone involved. Trevor leaned forward slightly. Helena, this doesn't have to be ugly. Take the severance. Move on. You're a smart woman. You'll find another job easily. Why make this harder than it needs to be? I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. Not just smugness or satisfaction. Certainty. He was absolutely certain he'd won. I need 24 hours to consult an attorney, I said. Jessica's expression went flat. That's your right. But as of this moment, you're on administrative leave, pending the completion of our investigation. You'll need to surrender your company property immediately. She pressed a button on the conference room phone. Within 30 seconds, Gerald from IT appeared at the door. We'd had lunch together dozens of times. He'd shown me pictures of his daughters. Now he wouldn't meet my eyes. Gerald will collect your laptop, mobile device, and building access, Jessica said. I pulled my phone and badge from my pocket, set them on the table. Gerald picked them up, still not looking at me. Your laptop? Jessica prompted. At my desk. Frank will escort you. The security guard appeared in the doorway. Frank, who'd always smiled and asked about my weekend. Now his face was professionally blank as he gestured for me to stand. The walk to my desk felt endless. The finance department occupied half of the third floor, and at 10:30 on a Thursday morning, everyone was at their desks. Every head turned as I walked through with a security guard behind me. Conversations stopped. My coworkers stared. You have 15 minutes to collect personal items, Frank said quietly. No files, no documents, no computer access. I pulled a cardboard box from the supply closet and began packing. Photos of my parents. A coffee mug from my college alma mater. A small plant that was probably going to die without daily watering. My hands moved automatically while my mind tried to process what was happening. Danielle appeared at the edge of my cubicle, her eyes wide. Helena? She whispered. Frank stepped closer. Please don't interfere. Danielle backed away but mouthed, What happened? I couldn't answer. Couldn't explain with Frank hovering with everyone watching. I just shook my head and kept packing. That's when Trevor walked past. He didn't have to. The marketing department was on the second floor. He'd come up here specifically. He paused at my cubicle, looked at me packing my things, and said loud enough for nearby coworkers to hear, Should have just played along, Helena. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Then he walked away, and I heard whispers start immediately. The story was already being written, and I wasn't there to defend myself. Frank escorted me out through the main lobby at 2 in the afternoon. Maximum visibility. Maximum humiliation. Everyone saw. The receptionist. Visiting clients. Employees coming back from lunch. All of them watched me walk out carrying a box of personal items with a security guard, making sure I left the building. I sat in my car in the parking lot, hands shaking so badly I couldn't get my key in the ignition. I pulled out my personal phone and saw notifications lighting up the screen. Group text messages from my team. Someone had already leaked a version of events. Helena terminated for harassment and insubordination. The messages in the group chat were careful, non-committal. Hope everything's okay. Let me know if you need anything. But I could read between the lines. They were distancing themselves, protecting their own positions. In corporate America, you don't associate with someone who's been terminated for cause, especially not for harassment allegations. I tried to access my work email from my personal phone, already disabled. Tried the company shared drive where I'd stored my research files, blocked. They'd moved with impressive speed to cut me off from everything. My phone buzzed with a new email. From Jessica. Subject line, urgent, legal matter. I opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter from the law firm Hastings and McBride, one of the largest corporate litigation firms in Connecticut. The letter informed me that Meridian Technologies had retained them to represent the company in potential matters arising from your employment termination. It went on to state that if I pursued legal action, discussed my termination with current employees, made any public statements about the company, or engaged in any action that could be construed as defamatory or harmful to Meridian Technologies or its employees, I would be sued for defamation, breach of confidentiality, tortious interference with business relationships, and any other applicable causes of action. The letter made it clear they had significant evidence of my misconduct that would be vigorously presented in any legal proceeding I initiated. The message was crystal clear. Stay silent or be destroyed. I sat in my car as the afternoon sun beat down through the windshield and realized they weren't just firing me. They were threatening to bury me professionally and financially if I fought back. They had resources, they had lawyers, they had a plan, and I was alone. I drove home in a fog, barely aware of the traffic around me. My apartment was in a modest complex in suburban Fairfield, 30 minutes from the office. 1 bedroom, 800 square feet, the kind of place where young professionals live while they're building their careers. Except I didn't have a career anymore. I parked and walked toward my building, still carrying the cardboard box of personal items. That's when I saw it. A notice taped to my apartment door. Bright yellow paper, impossible to miss. Notice of lease violation. My hands went numb. I fumbled with my keys, got inside, dropped the box, and read the notice properly. My landlord had received a phone call that afternoon from what he described as concerned parties, informing him that one of his tenants was under criminal investigation for corporate espionage and theft. The lease I'd signed had a morality clause. I had 30 days to vacate the premises. I read it twice, 3 times. They'd called my landlord. Within hours of my termination, someone had tracked down where I lived and contacted my landlord to start eviction proceedings. They weren't just removing me from the company. They were systematically dismantling my entire life. I slumped against the door and slid down to sit on the floor. Job gone. Reputation destroyed. Legal threats hanging over me. And now losing my home. In less than 8 hours, my life had been torn apart. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Helena? This is Bryn Callahan. You left me a voicemail this morning? Bryn. My former college roommate's sister. I'd called her in a panic around 7. Left a rambling message about needing an attorney. That felt like a lifetime ago now. Thank you for calling back, I managed. I'm a criminal defense attorney, not employment law, but I heard your message and I'm concerned. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? They're going to arrest me, I said. They told me they have criminal charges ready. Corporate espionage. I don't even know what that means in real terms, but they said if I fight them, I'll be arrested. Slow down, Bryn said. Tell me everything from the beginning. I spent 40 minutes on the phone, explaining the vendor discrepancies I'd found, Trevor's suspicious payments, the harassment allegations, the termination, the legal threat, and now the eviction notice. Bryn was quiet for a moment after I finished. This is coordinated legal warfare. Someone with serious resources is trying to bury you. The CEO's son, I said. I found evidence that he was approving payments to fake vendors. I think he's been embezzling from the company. Do you have proof? I made copies, not company files. I swear. I did my own research, looked up the vendors myself, cross-referenced addresses, found the connections to Trevor's personal associates. Everything I have, I created independently. But they'll argue you used proprietary company information to create it, Bryn said. Even if you did the research at home on your own time, they'll say you only knew to look because of information you accessed in your role. So I'm trapped, I said. Not necessarily. But Helena, you need to understand what you're up against. If they're willing to go this far, this fast, there's something big they're protecting. People don't deploy this level of legal aggression over nothing. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my kitchen table with my personal laptop open, looking at the folder I'd titled Meridian Vendor Analysis. 87 documents, spreadsheets showing payment patterns, copies of vendor registrations I'd found through public business databases, screenshots of addresses that led to UPS store mailboxes, evidence that looked damning. But would anyone believe me? Or would they see a disgruntled employee making accusations to justify her termination? At 2:30 in the morning, my personal email chimed. New message from an anonymous email service, the kind that doesn't track sender information. Subject, urgent warning. Body. They know you took files. They're claiming you stole proprietary data. Criminal charges being filed Monday. Lawyer up now. Destroy everything. My blood turned to ice. Someone was warning me. Someone inside the company, maybe. Or someone who knew what Meridian was planning. The message was clear. I had maybe 48 hours before police got involved. But destroy everything? That was the only evidence I had. Without it, I had nothing but my word against the CEO's son and an entire corporation. I stared at my laptop screen as dawn started to creep through my windows. The anonymous warning had said criminal charges. Not just civil lawsuits, actual arrest, criminal record, potential prison time for theft of corporate secrets. They weren't just trying to silence me. They were going to frame me as a criminal. I didn't sleep at all. By 6 Friday morning, I was sitting in my car outside Bryn's office building in Hartford, waiting for her to arrive. She pulled into the parking lot at 7:15, saw me, and waved me up. Her office was small but professional. Bryn was 35, sharp-eyed, with the kind of intensity that comes from years in criminal court. She made coffee while I showed her everything. The harassment complaint, the termination papers, the legal threat from Hastings and McBride, the eviction notice, and finally, the anonymous warning about criminal charges. Bryn read through everything twice, her expression growing darker. Show me what you have on the vendor fraud, she said. I opened my laptop and walked her through it. 8 months of suspicious payments. Vendors with no web presence, no customer reviews, no business history. $473,000 paid to companies that didn't seem to exist. One vendor, Summit Marketing Solutions, listed an address that was a UPS store in Stamford. Another, Cascade Consulting Group, shared an address with a company owned by someone named Andrew Walsh, who I discovered was Trevor's college roommate. I started researching after I noticed the payment patterns, I explained. These vendors would appear, get paid $50,000 to $80,000 over 2 months, then disappear. New vendors would pop up, all with Trevor's approval signature. Bryn studied the documents. This is significant. This could be wire fraud, embezzlement, possibly RICO if there's an organized conspiracy. But can I use it? I asked. They're going to say I stole this information. Did you access company systems to get this? No. I looked up the vendors through public business registries. I used Google. I cross-referenced addresses through public databases. Everything here I found on my own time using publicly available information. The only thing I knew from work was the vendor names and the payment amounts, which I remembered. Bryn nodded slowly. That's important. But they're going to argue you only knew to look because of your access to confidential company financial data. So what do I do? The desperation in my voice was obvious. You need to get this to authorities before they arrest you. Once you're charged, your credibility is destroyed. Every piece of evidence you have will be tainted by the accusation that you stole it through corporate espionage. Who do I go to? If Meridian is publicly traded, the SEC has a whistleblower program. There's also the FBI Corporate Fraud Division, or the State Attorney General's office. But filing formal complaints takes time, and time is what you don't have. I put my head in my hands. They've thought of everything. Every move I make. They're already 10 steps ahead. What about the board of directors? Bryn suggested. The CEO answers to the board. They have a fiduciary duty to investigate fraud. If you give them evidence that the CEO's son is embezzling, they're legally obligated to act. Can they suppress it? Harder to suppress if you send it to all of them simultaneously. 7 board members. If everyone has the evidence at once, it's much harder to bury. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a flicker of hope. How do I find their contact information? Publicly traded companies have to list their board members. We can find their addresses through SEC filings. We spent the rest of the morning building the evidence package, timeline of suspicious payments, analysis showing shell companies, Trevor's approval signatures, policy violations, estimated financial damage. We prepared 7 identical USB drives and 7 printed binders, each one a complete, professional, devastating presentation of fraud. By 2 p.m, we had 7 packages ready to mail via certified letter to each board member's address. Then Bryn's phone rang. She glanced at the screen, frowned. I need to take this. She stepped into the hallway. I could hear her voice, muffled through the door. When she came back, her face was pale. That was Garrett Chen, from Hastings and McBride. I know him from law school. He called me as a courtesy. Off the record. My stomach dropped. What did he say? He said the Carlisle family has connections. State senator, federal judge. They've already drafted a criminal complaint for corporate espionage. There's a warrant ready to go, just waiting for a signature. If those packages get mailed, you'll be arrested by end of business today. I stared at her. How do they know? How do they know what we're planning? Bryn shook her head slowly. They must be monitoring you somehow. Your phone, your email, something. They're always one step ahead. The packages sat on her desk, ready to go. 7 chances to get the truth to people with the power to act. And I couldn't send them without triggering my own arrest. What if I'm already being monitored right now? I said. What if they know I'm here? Then they already know everything, Bryn said quietly. I looked at the evidence we'd compiled, at the hours of work, at the proof of fraud that would never reach anyone who could do anything about it. Trevor had won, his father had won, and I was trapped. I left Bryn's office at 3 p.m, with nowhere to go and nothing to do except wait for the inevitable. I drove aimlessly through Hartford, then south through Fairfield County, barely seeing the road. My mind was spinning through scenarios, each one worse than the last. If I mailed the packages to the board, arrested. If I went to the police directly, they had connections, they'd block it. If I went public, posted the evidence online, sued into oblivion, still arrested. If I did nothing, they'd probably arrest me anyway, just to make sure I stayed silent. I found myself on Route 1, driving south with no destination. The late afternoon sun glinted off Long Island Sound to my right. I thought about just keeping driving, leaving Connecticut entirely. starting over somewhere far away where Meridian Technologies and the Carlyle family couldn't touch me. But running would look like guilt. And they'd pursue me anyway. Fugitive from justice. Corporate spy on the run. They'd turn me into a criminal even if I'd never committed a crime. By the time I returned to my apartment complex, it was 6 in the evening. The yellow eviction notice was still on my door. I ripped it down, went inside, and sat in the growing darkness, not bothering to turn on lights. My father died when I was 24. Massive heart attack, sudden and brutal. But before he died, I'd watched him spend 6 months being slowly destroyed by something almost identical to what was happening to me now. He'd worked for 33 years at a manufacturing company in Bridgeport. Line supervisor, loyal employee, modest pension waiting for him at retirement. Then the company was bought by a private equity firm. New executives came in. Within a year, they'd stripped the pension fund, declared bankruptcy, and walked away with millions while 1,000 workers lost their retirement savings. My dad had tried to fight it, talked to lawyers, talked to reporters, tried to get authorities to investigate. But the executives had expensive lawyers and political connections. The case dragged on. Dad became increasingly stressed, his health deteriorating. 6 months after the bankruptcy was finalized, he had the heart attack. I'd been in my senior year of college, studying finance. I changed my focus after his death. Decided I wanted to be the person who catches the thieves, who protects regular employees from executive corruption, who makes sure the numbers add up and the powerful are held accountable. 6 years at Meridian Technologies. 6 years of careful work, detailed analysis, finding small discrepancies, and fixing them before they became big problems. I'd saved the company hundreds of thousands of dollars through careful oversight. And now I was being destroyed for doing exactly that. I sat in my dark apartment and thought about just giving up. Taking the severance, signing the NDA, letting them win, moving somewhere far away and starting over in a different field entirely. Maybe they'd leave me alone if I just disappeared quietly. But then I thought about my father and how he died broken and betrayed. I thought about the other employees at Meridian who were trusting that someone was watching the money, making sure it was spent properly. I thought about what would happen if Trevor kept running his schemes, kept embezzling, kept stealing from the company while everyone looked the other way because his last name was Carlyle. Someone had to stop it. Someone had to be willing to stand up even when it was terrifying. At 3 in the morning, unable to sleep, I opened my laptop. There had to be something I was missing, some angle they hadn't covered. That's when I remembered the chat logs. Meridian used Slack for internal communications. Every employee had access. I'd been part of dozens of channels: finance team, cross-department projects, vendor management, budget review. Before they cut off my access yesterday, I'd used the archive function to download my chat history. It was automatic, something I did quarterly for record keeping, but I'd completely forgotten about it until now. I found the archive file on my laptop, opened it, started reading through months of conversations. And there it was, treasure trove of evidence I'd overlooked. March conversations in the vendor management channel. Trevor pushing the procurement team to approve Summit Marketing Solutions quickly. Just process it. We need to move fast on this opportunity. April conversations. Someone from procurement expressing concerns. I can't verify this company exists. No website, no references, no track record. Trevor's response. I've worked with them before. They're reliable. Just need you to trust me on this. May conversations in the budget review channel. The CFO, Philip Burke, weighing in when someone questioned a large payment. Trevor's approved it. That's sufficient. Let's not create bottlenecks in the approval process. More messages. Trevor joking with someone about keeping things quiet from the auditors. References to family business opportunities. Discussions about routing payments through different accounts to avoid triggering automatic flags. Everything time-stamped. Everything authenticated as official company communications. everything showing a clear pattern of suspicious behavior and deliberate evasion of oversight. I'd been so focused on the financial evidence that I'd completely overlooked the documented conversations proving knowledge and intent. These chat logs were gold. They showed Trevor knew the vendors were questionable. They showed Philip Burke, the CFO, helping to rush approvals. They showed a deliberate effort to hide transactions from audit review. And they were official company records that I'd archived before my termination. I hadn't stolen them after being fired. I downloaded them as part of my regular work process. I spent the next 2 hours organizing the chat logs, cross-referencing them with payment dates, building a timeline that showed conspiracy and intent. By 5:30 in the morning, I had a complete evidence package showing not just suspicious payments, but documented proof that Trevor and the CFO knew exactly what they were doing. The question was what to do with it. I couldn't go to the board. That path was compromised. I couldn't go to police directly. But there was one option I hadn't tried. Meridian's outside legal counsel. Every publicly traded company retains an external law firm for compliance and regulatory issues. These firms have an independent duty to report corporate fraud to authorities if they discover it. They can't be told to suppress evidence the way internal corporate counsel can. I found Meridian's SEC filings online, listed there. External counsel, Morrison and Sterling, based in New York. If I sent everything to Morrison and Sterling before business hours on Monday, it would sit in their email over the weekend. By Monday morning, the attorneys would be legally obligated to review it and report it to authorities. The company couldn't suppress it because external counsel had independent obligations. It felt like a long shot, but it was the only move left. I composed a detailed email, attached the financial evidence, attached the archived chat logs, explained my situation clearly and factually, included my contact information, and offered to provide additional documentation. I addressed it to the managing partner of Morrison and Sterling's corporate compliance division. At 5:45 Saturday morning, I took a deep breath and clicked send. 3 minutes later, I got an auto reply. This mailbox is no longer monitored. As of April 30th, Morrison and Sterling is no longer retained by Meridian Technologies Incorporated. Please direct all legal inquiries to internal corporate counsel at legal@meridiantech.com. I read it 3 times, my hands starting to shake. They'd fired their outside counsel, the one independent check on corporate behavior. Gone. Terminated just days ago. They'd eliminated that option before I even thought of it. I sat in the pre-dawn darkness and felt something break inside me. Every move I made, they'd anticipated. Every path I tried, they'd already blocked. They had more resources, more connections, more power, and they'd used all of it to systematically trap me. I'd done everything right, found fraud, documented it carefully, tried to report it through proper channels. And I was the one facing arrest while Trevor Carlyle was probably sleeping peacefully in his expensive apartment, confident that his father's money and power would protect him from any consequences. I thought about my father again, about how he'd fought and lost, about how the powerful always seem to win. My phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. At 6 in the morning on Saturday. I almost didn't answer. Helena? A woman's voice, familiar. It's Danielle. Please don't hang up. Danielle, my coworker. My friend, or at least I thought so before I watched her back away from me during my termination. How did you get my personal number? I asked. I'm calling from a burner phone. I can't talk long. Helena, I know what they did to you, and they're doing it to others too. I sat up straight. What? Can you meet me? Somewhere away from the office. I have information you need. Why should I trust you? Because I'm next, Danielle said. I asked questions about Trevor's budgets after you got fired. Jessica called me in yesterday for a meeting. I'm being monitored now. Helena, they're purging anyone who questions anything. She named a diner in Norwalk, 40 minutes away, 9 in the morning. I agreed and hung up, my mind racing. Was this real? Or another trap? But what did I have to lose at this point? The diner was called Rosie's, a classic chrome and red vinyl place that looked like it hadn't changed since the 1970s. I arrived at 8:45, got a booth in the back corner, and waited. Danielle walked in at 9 exactly, looking around nervously. She slid into the booth across from me. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. "Thank you for coming," she said. "You said others?" She nodded. 3 that I know of. Last year, a senior project manager named Andrew Brennan questioned some of Trevor's vendor selections. Fired 2 weeks later for supposed policy violations. 6 months ago, a compliance officer named Sarah Fletcher raised concerns about approval processes, terminated for creating departmental conflict. 3 months ago, Patrick from IT refused to alter server logs when they asked him to delete evidence of data access, fired for insubordination. I felt a chill run down my spine. They have a pattern. All 3 signed NDAs, took severance, left quietly. I talked to Andrew yesterday. He's terrified they'll come after him if he says anything. But he wanted you to know you're not alone and you're not crazy. How did you find them? LinkedIn. Started looking up people who left suddenly. Reached out quietly. They all had similar stories. Danielle pulled out her phone. "And I have this." She showed me photos, internal memos she'd photographed before leaving the office yesterday, communications between Jessica in HR and Philip Burke, the CFO, discussing problematic employees and neutralization strategies. "I've been smuggling out documents for 2 weeks," Danielle said. "Ever since I saw what they did to you, I knew I'd probably be next." "Why are you helping me?" She looked me in the eye. "Because I have a daughter. She's 7, and I don't want to work for a company where telling the truth gets you destroyed. I don't want her to grow up thinking that's how the world works." The diner door opened. A man walked in, mid-40s, wearing jeans and a polo shirt. He looked around, spotted us, and walked over. "Helena?" he said. "I'm Patrick Walsh, the fired IT administrator." Danielle waved him into the booth. Patrick sat down and immediately said, "They wanted me to alter server logs, make it look like you'd accessed files you weren't authorized to see, create evidence of data theft that didn't actually happen. When I refused, they fabricated policy violations and terminated me." "Do you have proof?" I asked. He pulled out a flash drive. "I made backups before I left. Server logs showing the real access history. Email communications between executives asking me to alter records. Messages between Robert Carlyle and Philip Burke discussing how to handle the, quote, Trevor situation. They knew," I breathed. "The CEO knew his son was running a fraud scheme." "Robert Carlyle knew from the beginning," Patrick said. "The emails go back 8 months. He approved it. Told Philip to give Trevor room to operate and make sure internal audits didn't catch it." I stared at the flash drive. "This is conspiracy at the highest level, which is why they're willing to destroy anyone who gets close to finding out," Patrick said. "But here's the thing. I never signed my NDA." "What?" "They fired me so fast, they screwed up the paperwork. Never got proper consideration for the NDA. My lawyer says it's unenforceable, which means I'm free to talk." Hope surged through me for the first time in days. "We have financial evidence, chat logs, witness testimony, and digital forensics. Together, we have enough." "Enough for what?" Danielle asked. "FBI corporate fraud. SEC, if we can prove securities violations, State Attorney General. We file complaints simultaneously on Monday morning. Hit them from multiple directions before they can react." Patrick nodded. "I'm in. I've been waiting for a chance to fight back." "I can provide supporting testimony," Danielle said, "and I have documents showing HR was helping cover it up. We spent the next 8 hours at that diner, organizing everything. My financial analysis showing the fraudulent payments, Patrick's server logs, and executive emails, Danielle's HR documents, the archived chat logs proving knowledge and intent. By 5 in the afternoon, we had a prosecutable case, wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation. We had Trevor, Robert Carlyle, Philip Burke, and potentially Jessica in HR all implicated. Monday morning, Patrick said. We file everything before the company opens. I'll go to FBI. Helena, you take SEC. Danielle, you go to State AG. All at the same time. What about the criminal charges they threatened against me? I asked. Whistleblower protection, Patrick said. The moment you file with federal authorities and provide evidence of corporate fraud, you're protected. They can't retaliate with bogus criminal charges without it looking like obvious retaliation. It felt too good to be true, but it was the only chance we had. Sunday, we met again to finalize everything. Triple-checked our evidence. Made sure our stories were consistent. Prepared for the counterattack we knew would come. At 4 on Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. I'd almost forgotten I still had it. The number showed Meridian Technologies' main line. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. And again. Finally, I answered. Hello? Helena. Jessica's voice, but different, less controlled, almost nervous. We need you to come in tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. I've been terminated. I don't work there anymore. Legal department from corporate headquarters is flying in. They've reviewed your situation and want to resolve this fairly. The CEO himself will be there. This is your chance to clear your name and return to work. My stomach dropped. Why would I do that? Helena, we were hasty. We didn't have all the information. We want to make this right, but you need to come in Monday at 6 a.m. before any announcements go out. Come alone. We'll have a settlement offer that I think you'll find very generous. I felt cold spread through my chest. How did you know? Know what? That I was planning something for Monday morning. Silence on the line. Then, Helena, I don't know what you're talking about. We're offering you a chance to resolve this amicably. 6 a.m. Main conference room. The CEO wants to apologize personally. She hung up. I looked at Danielle and Patrick. They know. They know what we're planning. How? Danielle asked, her face going pale. I don't know. But they're trying to intercept me before we can file. The 6 a.m. meeting is designed to keep me contained while they figure out who else is involved. Patrick stood up, agitated. Did either of you tell anyone? No, Danielle said. No, I echoed. We looked at each other, and I saw fear in their eyes. If the company knew our plan, they'd be ready. They'd have counter moves prepared. They might have already filed their own complaints, framing us as the criminals before we could tell our side. What do we do? Danielle whispered. I thought about the meeting invitation. 6 a.m. Monday. Before business hours, before we could file our complaints, and I made a decision. I'm going to the meeting, I said. That's insane, Patrick said. They think I'll come alone, scared, ready to accept whatever deal they offer. They think they've won. I looked at both of them, but if they already know we're planning something, then the only advantage we have is that they don't know exactly when. You two stay away. Stay safe. Keep the evidence secure. Helena, they'll trap you, Danielle said. Maybe. Or maybe I'll trap them. I smiled, feeling something cold and determined settling into my chest. I'm done running. I'm done being afraid. Monday at 6 a.m., I'm walking into that meeting, and I'm going to tell Robert Carlyle and his son and everyone involved that their fraud is going to be exposed. They'll arrest you on the spot, Patrick warned. They might, but I'm sending the evidence packages to FBI, SEC, and State Attorney General tonight. Time delivery for 7 a.m. Monday. If it's a trap and they arrest me, at least the authorities will have everything by the time I'm in custody. I spent Sunday night preparing, organized every piece of evidence, wrote detailed cover letters explaining the entire situation, created 3 complete packages. At 4 Monday morning, I logged into my email and composed 3 messages with attachments, scheduled them to send at 7 a.m. Then I got dressed. professional attire, confident, ready for war. At 5:45, I arrived at Meridian Technologies. The parking lot was nearly empty at this hour, only a few cars clustered near the executive entrance. I recognized Robert Carlyle's black Mercedes, Philip Burke's silver Lexus, a few others I didn't know. The security guard at the front desk looked surprised to see me. Miss Helena? I thought you were. I have a meeting, I said calmly. He checked his computer, nodded. Top floor, executive conference room. The elevator ride felt endless. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. Whatever happened in the next hour would determine everything. The executive floor was quiet, lights dimmed. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I could see them waiting. Robert Carlyle at the head of the table. Trevor beside him. Philip Burke. Jessica. Their lawyer Amanda Morrison, general counsel, and two men I didn't recognize in expensive suits. I walked in at exactly 6 a.m. Helena, Robert Carlyle said, standing. Thank you for coming. He was 58, silver-haired, commanding presence, the kind of man who'd built a company through force of will and didn't tolerate dissent. He gestured to a chair. Saturday. I want to start by apologizing, Robert said, his voice warm and fatherly. We mishandled your situation. We acted hastily, didn't get all the facts. I take responsibility for that. I said nothing, just watched him. Trevor is young, he's learning. He made some errors in judgment, got defensive when you questioned his work, but that's no excuse for how we treated you. He slid a paper across the table. We'd like to offer you your position back, not just senior analyst. We're promoting you to Director of Financial Compliance. Salary of $190,000, plus a cash settlement of $300,000 for the distress we've caused. I looked at the offer letter. It was substantial, life-changing money. And attached to it, a thick non-disclosure agreement. In exchange, Robert continued, we put all of this behind us. You sign an agreement that this dispute is resolved, no admission of wrongdoing by either party, and we all move forward. Trevor was watching me, his expression unreadable now. Not smirking, carefully neutral. That's very generous, I said quietly. You're a valuable employee, Helena. We don't want to lose you. What about the harassment allegations? The termination paperwork? Expunged from your record. It never happened. Clean slate. I nodded slowly, as if considering it. And what if I don't accept? The warmth left Robert's face. Then we proceed with the alternative. Philip Burke spoke up. Criminal charges for corporate espionage, theft of proprietary data, and attempted extortion. You'll be arrested today. Your attorney will face ethics violations for helping you. And your accomplices will be charged as co-conspirators. So they knew about Patrick and Danielle. We have investigators who've been following you all weekend, Robert said. We know about your meetings. We know about your plans. We know everything, Helena. He gestured to the two men in suits. These gentlemen are from Sentinel Corporate Security. They've documented your activities, your contacts, your communications. If you refuse this offer, we have everything we need to destroy you and everyone who helped you. So this isn't a negotiation, I said. It's a threat. It's a choice, Robert said coldly. Take the money and move on. Or spend the next 5 years fighting criminal charges while you're unemployed and unemployable. Your choice. I looked around the table. At Trevor, who was starting to look confident again. At Jessica, whose expression was carefully blank. At Philip Burke, who looked bored, like this was just another business transaction. At Robert Carlyle, who was absolutely certain he'd won. I smiled. First time in a week. New deal, I said. Robert's expression hardened. You're making a serious mistake. Am I? I pulled out my phone, checked the time. 6:53. I don't think so. Amanda, call the police, Robert ordered. Press charges. Amanda Morrison picked up her phone. She was mid-dial when the conference room door opened. The security guard from downstairs. Mr. Carlyle? There are federal agents in the lobby. Robert looked up sharply. What? FBI, SEC enforcement officers, and state police. They have warrants. They're on their way up now. The color drained from Robert's face. What are you talking about? I filed complaints at 4 this morning, I said calmly. Everything has been with federal authorities for almost 3 hours. Financial evidence showing Trevor's vendor fraud. Server logs showing you knew about it from the beginning. Chat logs proving conspiracy. Witness testimony. Digital forensics. Everything. You're lying, Trevor said, but his voice cracked. You're under arrest the moment those agents walk through that door, I continued. Wire fraud, conspiracy to defraud, obstruction of justice, and probably more charges once they really dig in. Robert was on his feet now, face red. Amanda, this is impossible. You were monitoring her. Amanda looked panicked, checking her phone. I don't understand. We had her communications flagged. We should have seen. You were watching my work email and my work phone, I said. I used my personal accounts, sent everything from home at 4 a.m. while you were all sleeping. The door opened again. 6 people in FBI windbreakers entered, followed by suits from the SEC. Robert Carlyle? The lead agent said. Trevor Carlyle? Philip Burke? You're under arrest. The next few minutes were chaos. Robert shouting at his lawyers, Trevor going pale and silent, Philip Burke trying to argue, Jessica attempting to leave the room and being told to stay put. An SEC enforcement officer approached me. Miss Helena, thank you for the evidence. The archived chat logs particularly. Time-stamped, authenticated, admissible. The conversations between the defendants show clear conspiracy. I'd almost forgotten about those. The casual Slack conversations where they admitted everything. The evidence they'd never tried to suppress because they didn't think anyone would archive internal chats. We've been looking at Meridian for 6 months, the agent continued. But we couldn't prove executive knowledge. Your documentation gave us everything we needed. I watched as they handcuffed Trevor. He looked at me, all the arrogance gone, replaced by shock and fear. You made me feel inferior, I said quietly, so only he could hear. But you did that to yourself. They led them out. All 3 of them, Robert Carlyle, Trevor Carlyle, and Philip Burke, in handcuffs, walked through the building lobby as early arriving employees stared in shock. Jessica was taken for questioning. Amanda Morrison was being interrogated about what she knew and when. I sat in the conference room as dawn light streamed through the windows, feeling something I hadn't felt in a week. Relief. Justice. Vindication. The board of directors arrived by 8 a.m., called in for an emergency meeting. 7 members, all looking shell-shocked, as FBI agents briefed them on the arrests. Margaret Thornton, the senior board member, a woman in her 60s who'd built her own company before joining Meridian's board, asked to speak with me privately. We went to an empty office. She sat down heavily, looking exhausted despite the early hour. Tell me everything, she said. I spent 2 hours walking her through the entire situation, the vendor irregularities I'd found, the suspicious payments, how I'd tried to flag concerns through proper channels, Trevor's retaliation, the harassment allegations, the termination, the legal threats, the criminal charges they'd prepared, the cover-up that went all the way to the CEO. Margaret listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker. The board had no idea, she said finally. Robert ran this company like his personal kingdom. We trusted him. That was our failure. What happens now? For you? Whatever you want. The board is terminating Robert's contract for cause. Trevor is obviously gone. Philip Burke is gone. Jessica and Amanda are suspended pending investigation of their roles. The company needs leadership, I said. We have an interim CEO being appointed this afternoon, but we need someone to rebuild the finance department, implement proper oversight, make sure this never happens again. She looked at me directly. We'd like to offer you the position of Vice President of Finance and Compliance, $250,000 salary, full authority to implement whatever controls and processes you think necessary. I thought about it for about 3 seconds. I accept. On one condition. Name it. Patrick Walsh, your former IT administrator, needs to be rehired as Director of IT Security. He was fired for refusing to help cover up fraud. And Danielle Reeves needs protection from retaliation. I want her promoted to Director of Accounts. Margaret nodded. Done. Anyone else who was wrongfully terminated? 3 others. I have their names. We'll reach out to all of them. Settlements, cleared records, apologies, whatever they need. Over the next week, the story unfolded publicly. Federal prosecutors announced charges against Robert, Trevor, and Philip. Wire fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, witness intimidation. The investigation revealed $8.3 million in fraudulent payments over 3 years, not just 8 months. Trevor had been running the scheme since he joined the company, with his father's knowledge and protection. They'd been siphoning money through fake vendors, splitting proceeds with Trevor's college friends who helped set up the shell companies. When employees questioned it, they were systematically removed, threatened, silenced. 4 people before me, all intimidated into signing NDAs and disappearing quietly. Patrick was rehired within days. Danielle was promoted and given a raise. The 3 previous terminated employees were contacted, offered substantial settlements, and had their employment records corrected. I moved into my new office on the 5th floor. Trevor's old office, actually. I had the furniture replaced and the walls repainted, made it mine. The FBI agent who'd led the investigation visited 2 weeks later. Your archived chat logs were the breakthrough, he said. Defendants are planning to plead guilty, looking at 5 to 10 years federal prison. All of them? Trevor and Philip definitely. Robert is fighting it, but his own emails prove knowledge. It's not going well for him. I thought about Robert Carlyle, the powerful CEO who'd seemed untouchable, now facing prison. About Trevor, who thought his last name would protect him from consequences. One question, I said. How did they know we were planning to file complaints that Monday? They called me Sunday. Tried to get me to come in early. The agent smiled slightly. They didn't. That was just standard intimidation tactics. You got paranoid, which was smart. But they were just guessing you might be planning something. They had no idea you'd actually filed until the warrants were executed. I laughed despite myself. I'd been so sure they were always ahead of me. Turns out they were just using fear and pressure and hoping I'd break. 6 months later, I attended the sentencing hearing. Trevor Carlyle, 7 years federal prison. Philip Burke, 8 years. Robert Carlyle fought to the end, but ultimately pleaded guilty to reduced charges, 6 years. Jessica and Amanda lost their licenses and faced misdemeanor charges for their roles in the cover-up. Meridian Technologies survived. The new CEO, brought in from outside, cleaned house, implemented new financial controls, ethics training, whistleblower protections. The company actually became stronger, more transparent. I was featured in a Wall Street Journal article about corporate whistleblowers. My story inspired others to come forward at different companies. But the best moment came 3 months after the arrests. I was working late, reviewing quarterly reports, when my desk phone rang. Helena? It's Andrew Brennan, the senior project manager who'd been fired a year before me. I saw the news, he said. I just wanted to say thank you. I've been living with that NDA, that fear, for a year. Watching you fight back, watching you win, it gave me courage to tell my own story. I filed a lawsuit yesterday against the company that fired me. My lawyer thinks we have a case. Good, I said. Fight back. Tell the truth. Don't let them make you disappear. I won't, because I saw that you didn't. That's when I understood what all of this had been about. Not just my own justice, but showing others that it's possible to stand up to power and win. That corporations aren't invincible, that the truth still matters. I thought about my father who'd fought and lost, about how broken he'd been at the end. I wished he could have seen this. Seen that sometimes the good guys do win, that standing up for what's right, even when you're terrified, can actually work. The archived chat logs that brought everything down were just routine documentation. Small acts of diligence I'd done without thinking, never knowing they'd become the key evidence in a federal case. That's the lesson I carry now. You don't know which small action will matter later. You don't know which moment of integrity will be the one that makes the difference. So you do the right thing every time. You document carefully. You tell the truth. You stand up even when you're shaking with fear. Because sometimes, just sometimes, justice actually happens. Not because the system is perfect, not because the powerful face consequences automatically, but because ordinary people refuse to be silenced. Because someone, somewhere, decides to fight even when winning seems impossible. I'm still at Meridian Technologies, still VP of Finance and Compliance, still making sure the numbers add up and the powerful are held accountable. And every day, I remember the lesson my father couldn't learn. You can lose 1,000 battles and still win the war. You can be broken and still rebuild. You can face overwhelming power and still prevail. You just have to refuse to quit, even when quitting is the easiest thing in the world, especially then. Have you ever faced a situation where standing up for the truth felt impossible? Where powerful people tried to silence you? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that fighting back is possible, that justice can happen. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it gives you strength when you need it most. Remember, your integrity is worth fighting for, always.